This is the daily writing recorded, day 55, titled Eudibux, Meyen. Intrinsically hidden, categorically secretive. Long were the days of heroes and magic. Long were the hours crafted penmen scratched away their stiffened quills on long-forgotten souls, perished in the making of history. It was not to be. It never was. A painful conclusion drawn by those few remaining men and women left from learned past that came together in the alcove of Meyen. The wind tortured their tattered clothes. Their eyes squinted in the scattering of salt swept across the water, which filled their mouths and lungs with bitter reminders of their failures. The last fleet of humanity burned several kilometers away. It was not to be. "What now?" Rand said. He stood near the waterline. His eyes were fixed on the fires afar. His hands held tightly onto a large cut piece of blue and white striped cloth, which he had wrapped around his head and torso. "What will come of this world?" he asked. None of the other four that stood with him knew how to respond. Petra, who stood to the right of him, could not speak. Her mouth was glued shut by the tears that steadily flowed from the corners of her eyes and down onto and around her lips. She looked to the right of her at Caleb, in hopes he could find the words. Caleb kneeled onto the sand and briefly buried his face into his hands. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Farran shook her head and balled her fists, holding on to her shawl with the other. "This cannot be it," she screamed into the wind. "There must be others." "So what?" Otis barked back. "So what? It is over. It is done." "It cannot be," Farran desperately yelled back. "There must be a way. There must be a way we can win." "But we did win," Otis replied. "We did win. This is what winning looks like." Farran did not know how to respond. She looked at Otis with desperate eyes and hoped to find the words to convince him. But none came. She then turned to her left in hopes of finding refuge with the others. The others returned their horrified gaze with ones of their own. She then approached Rand and grabbed him by his hands. Her shawl was stolen by the wind, jerked away and absconded across the sea towards the burning embers of humanity. "Tell me it is not over," she pleaded softly. "Tell me there is still hope." Rand looked down upon her face and her terrified eyes and pressed his lips together. His sorrowed eyes betrayed his thoughts. He held on to Farran's wrist and gently shook his head. Within that moment, for Farran, all measures of hope burned away. Desperation took hold, and panic set in. "No," she screamed, jerking herself away from Rand. "No! No," she said repeatedly. Rand tried to hold on to her, but Farran was persistent, and Rand had lost his strength. She twisted herself around and fell into the sand. Upon her hands and knees she crawled, fighting her way towards the sea. The waves kept pushing her back, but Farran proved resilient. The others watched on, certain of her fate. Farran subsided within her madness, her screams lost in the torrent of violence produced by a sea that seemed to give her chance after chance, until eventually it too gave up. Farran was taken by a wave and pulled out into the cold darkness, her voice no longer audible, and soon never to be heard from again. Otis looked up at the sky and smiled. He had fought the coming tears long enough. Now there was no stopping it. His heart had turned cold, his body into ice. Caleb got up from the sand and stared out in front of him, his eyes fixed upon the horizon. Petra knew what he was thinking about. They all thought the same. Rand took the first few steps. Otis overtook him. Both made it to the shoreline. Neither made it into the water. Caleb, on the other hand, did, but unlike Farran, lacked the conviction to persist. The water spit him back out, and Caleb was too weak to resist. That left Petra, whose eyes were not fixed upon the sea, but onto the land behind them. She had turned around and gazed upon the line of trees and the starry skies dancing above. She sighed deeply and rubbed her hands against the wet fabric of her trousers. It was never a choice for her. For her, it was far from done. Nothing more has been written or recorded. Thank you for listening, and good night.